Chapter 1. Rampaging Dire Beasts, The Age of Arcanas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Lantian Base City. Central Hospital, Ward 302. I've crossed over. There was a slightly excited expression on Ling Jiu's face. He had originally been an ordinary office worker back on Earth and had been slogging hard for 3 meals a day. However, as soon as he woke up, he realized that he had crossed over into this world and had been reborn as a teenager with the same name. Well, so be it then, since he had no attachments back on Earth. It was the beginning of a brand new life. The problem was, this world was extremely dangerous. The memory of his past life had told him that this was a parallel world, and it was also called Earth. It was not until a catastrophe known as Woe of the Dire Beasts, which swept the globe, that the planet was set on a path of no return. A large number of dimensional rifts had appeared on Earth. Arcane energy called the Gene Arcana had gushed out of the rifts and spread across the world, eventually leading to the evolution of the animals, as well as plant life, on Earth. Meek kitties had become ferocious beasts with huge fangs and claws, while loyal doggos had become bloodthirsty demons. Even the bonsai plants in people's homes evolved into ravenous man-eating trees. As for the birds and beasts in the wild that strictly followed the laws of the jungle, all of them had evolved into apocalyptic dire beasts. Disaster was inevitable. Countless dire beasts had begun to assail human habitats, and humans rose up in resistance, only to find that their proud firearms could kill some low-level dire beasts. Even nuclear weapons, which had served as a strategic deterrent before, were unable to have the desired effect. The consequences were devastating, with humans falling from the top of the food chain straight to the bottom. Countless people perished. Countless cities were destroyed. Countless families were ripped apart. In just a few years, the world's human population had plummeted from 6 billion to 3 billion, and half of the world's people had died by the claws of the dire beasts. Why did I end up in such a dangerous world? Ling Jiu felt suffocated. It was an absolutely perilous world, and even though he was living in a base city, it was still dangerous. One needed to know that the Lantian base city he lived in was just a medium-sized base city with a population of 5 million. If they ran into a slightly stronger dire beast, the city's defenses would be at risk of being broken. The teenager, whom Ling Jiu possessed, had been hospitalized due to serious injuries caused by a dire beast that had broken into the base city. It looks like this young man with the same name as me, Ling Jiu, was born into a broke-asterisk family, and his cheap father just declared bankruptcy last month. He is hundreds of millions in debt. Ling Jiu was in despair. It had not been easy for him to ride the wave to cross over. For him to end up in such a dangerous place on top of being broke, Ling Jiu had no idea if it was appropriate or not to verbalize the words in his heart. Forget it, let's just deal with it now that I'm here. Ling Jiu soon focused his attention on another thing. The Arcanites. The animals and plants had evolved under the stimulation of the Gene Arcana, and humans, as part of Earth, were no exception. A very few lucky ones had also evolved with the nourishment of the Gene Arcana and attained all kinds of incredible abilities. Flame control, metal control, gravity control, instant movement, extreme speed. People called these abilities Arcana, and those who had Arcanas, Arcanists. The appearance of the Arcanites allowed mankind the ability to fight the dire beasts. With the Arcanists' help, humans quickly established survival bases, and thus, managed to survive. In this world of rampaging dire beasts and all-around danger, the Arcanites pretty much defended humanity while they fought the dire beasts. They also had a variety of privileges at the same time, and every Arcanist was of the upper class. Arcanists, Forget the identity and status of one, having an Arcana itself is tempting enough. Green light appeared in Ling Jiu's eyes. In his previous life, people with special powers had only existed in novels, comics, movies, and TV series. But in this world, people with special powers existed. Some could control fire and lightning, some could transform into giants, some could instantly teleport, while some could move at the speed of light. It's just so tempting. If I had an arcana, it would be just so awesome. The more Ling Jiao thought about it, the more excited he got. There are generally two ways to become an arcanist. One is having the talent for arcana. The vast majority of arcanites were born with natural talent, and as long as they reach the right age, they can participate in the arcana trials and awaken their arcana. The problem is, there are very few people with innate arcana talents, and there may not be one even in a group of 1,000. So, the number of arcanists is very low, and of Lantian's 5 million strong population, the number of arcanites only comes to a few thousand. Second, via arcana agents. The gene arcana appeared 30 years ago, and after such a long period of research, scientists have successfully developed an arcana agent. I've heard that a single vial of arcana agent would allow an ordinary person without any arcana talents to awaken their arcana abilities. Unfortunately, that thing is just too expensive. Ling Jiao sighed. A vial of arcana agent was worth hundreds of millions, and the moment it appeared, all parties would snatch it up. Even if his dad were not bankrupt, he would not be able to afford it. It looks like I can only place my hope on the arcana trials in half a month's time. It is worth mentioning that while there were arcanites in this world, the vast majority of people were still ordinary folk. So, Huaxia still retained the college entrance examination system, and the arcana trials was a month before the college entrance examination. If he was found to have arcana talents during the trials, his life trajectory would change dramatically. He would not need to take the college entrance exams, would not need to slog through college, and would directly be hired by an arcana agency. He would lead a completely different and exciting life. "Brother, how are you?" Just as Ling Jiao fell into deep thought, someone suddenly pushed the ward door open. Wearing a school uniform, a girl with unconcealable beauty came in with a bag of fruits. What a kawaii one girl. She was a literal goddess. Ling Jiao's eyes were wide open. "Brother, what's the matter with you? Are you unwell?" The pretty girl looked puzzled. "No, nothing." Ling Jiao quickly shook his head, and his feelings were rather complicated. The beautiful girl was none other than his cheap sister, Ling Xiaotong. Chapter 2. Jumping up the social ladder, Arcana Trials. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. A week later, with his body healed, Ling Jiao was discharged from the hospital. He then began his tedious school life. His results in his past life had been good, and he had been a first-tier student. Yet, it was useless as the curriculum in this world was very different from the one in his past life. Even if you were an English professor, you might still fail this world's college entrance examination because English was not even part of the subjects. While he attended the boring classes, the 5th of May arrived in the blink of an eye. Just as the evening self-study session was about to end, the headmaster came in. "I have something to tell you." The headmaster was a bespectacled middle-aged man, named Yin Guoping. "We all know that the Arcana trials will begin tomorrow. I believe all of you are looking forward to it, but I would like to remind everyone to not place too much hope in it. The chances of an arcanist's appearing is 1,000 to 1. Hence, for the vast majority of us, the Arcana trials is just a walk. There are also things that you need to do after the trials. We only have one goal, and that's the college entrance examination next month. Do you understand?" Yin Guoping looked at everyone in the class. "Yes, sir." Everyone answered loudly, but the flame of hope was burning bright in their eyes. Arcanists were upper-class folk. Should their arcana be detected during the trials, they could jump up the social ladder and completely change their own fate as well as the fate of their family. Who would give up so easily? It all depends on tomorrow. Looking at the eyes of the students in the class, the headmaster sighed. He would say the same thing year after year, and it would always fell on deaf ears. Early the next morning, the schoolyard was packed, as all of Lantian First High School's third years had arrived. "Oh, Ling, I'm nervous." Ling Jiu's best buddy, Li Kai, was particularly nervous. His family background was ordinary, but he was easygoing and righteous. He could get along with Ling Jiu, so their relationship was good. "Oh, Li, chill. If you're fated to get it, you'll get it. If you aren't, it won't come no matter how much you try." Ling Jiu smiled and comforted him. Although he said that, he was equally nervous inside. It was a moment that would truly determine one's fate, who could stay calm. "Oh, Ling, you're just too steady." The clock struck 8 amidst everyone's uneasiness, and the principal, as well as other school leaders, led a group of people up the stage in the schoolyard. Others carried some instruments and placed them on a pre-prepared table. After he waited for everyone to settle down, the principal looked at the sea of students as he said with a loud voice, "Today's the Arcana trials. First, let us all welcome with warm applause, the manager of the Longwind Arcana Company's Lantian Bay City branch, Mr. Dai Changsheng and his team." Clap, clap, clap. Thunderous applause rang across the field, and all of the students stared eagerly at Dai Changsheng as well as the employees of the Longwind Arcana Company he had brought with him. In this world, Arcanites would generally choose to join a force. The force could be the army, or an Arcana agency, or a consortium, or a family, or some other organization. These organizations, which had gathered many Arcanists, were the greatest forces of mankind, and they held resources that ordinary people could never reach. The Longwind Arcana Company was one of the top 500 Arcana companies in Huaxia, and its branches covered many of Huaxia's various base cities. It was extremely strong. To be able to become the general manager of the Lantian Bay City branch, Dai Changsheng was definitely an Arcanite himself. Who would not be excited to see an Arcanist? "Hello, students." Dai Changsheng gave the students a simple greeting, and the Arcana trials officially began. The testing equipment were a combination of a computer and a mind helmet combination that they just brought. There was a total of 10 instruments, and each time 10 people could undergo the trial. After a class teacher called out names based on the list, 10 students walked up the stage. Then, with the guidance of Longwind's staff, they put on the mind helmets and started the trial. Is this the device to test if someone has Arcana talents? I heard it's expensive. It's not ordinarily expensive. To put it bluntly, even if we were sold, the money from that won't be enough to cover one device. Are you for real? You think? The device is made out of 2 components, a smart computer and a mind helmet. Once we put on the mind helmet, our minds will be drawn into a preset virtual realm by the computer, and will experience some extreme situations. At the same time, a special silver needle on the helmet will stimulate the pineal gland at the front of our brain and input the gene Arcana into it. Under the twin stimulation, people who have Arcana talents will generally awaken successfully. As the audience below whispered, Longwind Company's staff operated the computers. The next moment, all 10 students screamed because they had encountered something unusual. Some were angry, some were desperate, some were fearful, some were excited. Their expressions were varied but all extreme. Ling Jiu was secretly amazed. While experiencing extreme stimuli and injecting the gene Arcana into the pineal gland, Arcana would be awakened under the twin stimuli. So this was the Arcana trials. Of course, only those with latent talents would awaken. If you did not have any Arcana talent, it would only be as good as tossing about and doing nothing. I wonder if these 10 students have Arcana talents. Ling Jiu stared at the 10 students closely, and all of the students on the field watched them nervously as well. It was the first time most people were watching an Arcana trial, but it might also be the only time in their lives. Unknowingly, a minute had passed, and aside from screaming, the 10 students showed no abnormal behavior. They have no Arcana talents. Dai Changsheng shook his head and motioned the staff to stop the trial. Next batch. The school leaders had long gotten accustomed to this. There were too few students with innate arcana talents, and in the previous years, getting even one was good enough. In fact, for many years, there had not been a single student with arcana talents. This year's trials had only just begun, so it would be impossible for them to strike something yet, so they had to be patient. Next batch. Next batch. Next batch. The north had started to warm up in May, and as time passed, the sun rose increasingly higher while the students waited nervously under the scorching sun. When it was close to noon, the first to the 10th classes had completed the trial. What made everyone sad was that the 10 classes had more than 500 students in total, and no one had any arcana talents. Seeing this, many students gradually despaired. To think that there's no one in the first 10 classes with arcana talents. It looks like we're done for. Damn, the probability is just too low. Ling Jiu was secretly anxious. He was not a person without confidence, but he was unable to muster any confidence with the situation before him. 10 classes, and not a single person. That made it impossible to have hope. OL Ling, it's our class turn. Chapter 3. Arcana Awakened, but it's not me you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Ling Jiu looked up and saw Yin Guoping. Their class teacher was walking toward the rostrum with a list in hand. Whether I'll live an easy life or slog for the rest of my life, it all depends on this. Ling Jiu said to himself. His student number was 36, and he was in the 4th batch of his class. After a few minutes, it was his turn. Zhang Hui. Ma Tianyu. Wang Fang. Luo Deshu. Li Xiaoqiang. Ling Jiu. Li Kai. OL Ling, I'm so nervous. Li Kai's trembling hands were sweaty. OL Li, look on the bright side, this is just an arcana trial, not a blind date with a gold digger. What the hell are you afraid of? Ling Jiu smiled faintly and stepped up the stage first, but because he was too nervous, he stepped on air and stumbled like a fool. OL Ling, are you all right? Li Kai asked with concern. I'm fine. *T, a bad start. Ling Jiu quickly got up and went up the stage nervously. Then the staff from Longwind Company placed the mind helmet on his head. Woa! Ling Jiu only felt his consciousness blur for a moment before he arrived in a completely unfamiliar environment. The wind was howling and bitingly cold. As he looked over, he saw that the earth was covered in thick white snow. This was a world of ice and snow. Is this the virtual world created by the smart computer? Ling Jiu was shocked. This is too real, isn't it? Was it real? It was absolutely real. The white snow, the howling winds, the white icebergs, and the crunchy sound of footsteps on the snow. Ling Jiu even felt the bone-chilling cold. Was this really a virtual world? Roar! Just as Ling Jiu was wrecked by uncertainty, a thunderous roar rang out in the distance. As the rolling sound wave rushed over, Ling Jiu's eardrums felt like they were about to shatter. Turning around, he saw a polar bear about hundreds of meters tall leaping toward him. Boom! Boom! The polar bear landed on the ground in thunderous thuds as the earth shook. The terrifying threat sent Ling Jiu trembling. It's fake. It's all fake. It's a virtual environment, there's nothing to be afraid of. Ling Jiu tried his best to tell himself that, but his body shook uncontrollably, especially when he looked at the fast-approaching polar bear. The fear in his heart became stronger and stronger. In the end, the polar bear lunged at Ling Jiu and crushed his head with a snap of its jaw. Whoosh! Another blur later, Ling Jiu sensed that his mind had exited the virtual space. Right then, he was drenched in cold sweat. His legs were shaking uncontrollably, and his face was extremely pale. That was scary. Recalling the image earlier, Ling Jiao felt the lingering fear in his heart. Before he could completely calm down, though, an excited voice suddenly traveled into his ears. Someone has awakened. Awakened. Could it be me? Ling Jiao was shocked as he looked at the owner of the voice. It was Dai Changsheng. He only saw Dai Changsheng look in his direction with a gratified expression. Boy, congratulations on being the lucky one and awakening the power of the earth. Awakening the power of earth. Is it me? Ling Jiao was so excited that he could not help himself. He then saw the principal, the class teacher, and the top school leaders all walking toward him. The principal even stretched out his hands enthusiastically as he tried to shake his hand. Ling Jiao was so elated that he was about to reach out and shake the principal's hand. Unexpectedly, the principal walked past him, and the class teacher, as well as all those from the school's top echelon, walked past him. They made their way to the person beside him and surrounded that person. This student here, what's your name? Li Kai. I'm Li Kai. Li Kai, congratulations. Li Kai, you are the pride of First High. Ling Jiao turned around and looked at Li Kai, who was surrounded by the principal, the class teacher, and the leadership cadre of the school. His whole being was struck by lightning. He only saw countless grains of yellow sand surrounding Li Kai and dancing around him like fairies. They did not seem to be bound by Earth's gravity but were, instead, controlled by Li Kai. He then looked at himself, there was nothing. Li Kai awakened the power of Earth. Not me. Ling Jiao felt like he had fallen into an ice cave, and if there was a song to describe his mood now, there was nothing more fitting than the following. Fluttering snow. Howling winds. The world was nothing but a blur. God, why have you screwed me over? Ling Jiao did not know how he left the stage. The greatest pain in life was to be given hope, only to have it extinguished. Sigh, bloody hell. Ling Jiao was not in the mood to watch the rest of the trials as he prepared to find a place to vent. As for the others, they could go to hell. OL, Ling. Li Kai's voice rang out from behind. Ling Jiao turned around and looked at Li Kai who was walking over. OL, Li, congratulations. He forced a smile. OL, Ling. Li Kai was still stuck in his state of euphoria as he hugged Ling Jiao and shouted, OL, Ling, I've awakened my arcana. I've awakened my arcana. Congratulations. Ling Jiao smiled bitterly and congratulated Li Kai. However, he was promptly stunned because the moment Li Kai grabbed him, a few lines of weird golden characters suddenly appeared before him. Name. Li Kai Race. Human Arcana. Earth Manipulation, Awakened, Replicable, Bloody Hell. Ling Jiao thought that he was hallucinating, and he shook his head vigorously. Yet, the few lines of small characters were stuck in front of his eyes, and they remained there. The hell. Ling Jiao pulled away from Li Kai, and the lines of words disappeared. When he touched Li Kai again, the words appeared once again. Name. Li Kai Race. Human Arcana. Earth Manipulation, Awakened, Replicable. After several consecutive attempts, Ling Jiao discovered something weird. Whenever he came into contact with Li Kai, the words would appear. Could it be? This is my arcana. Replicable. What does that mean? Can I replicate Li Kai's arcana? Ling Jiao's breathing became erratic as he tried to replicate it. Whoosh. The small words instantly spread out and formed a golden light that enveloped Li Kai. At that moment, Li Kai seemed to be covered by a thin golden veil, which completely enclosed him from head to toe. About 10 seconds later, the golden light left Li Kai's body and returned to Ling Jiao. This time, a set of different characters appeared. Replication successful. Assimilate. Assimilate. Chapter 4. Secret Arcana Technique, attempts to win over commence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Whoosh. The small golden letters transformed into a golden light stream and poured into his brain. Immediately after, extremely condensed energy exploded in Ling Jiu's head and swept through his entire brain. Whoosh. Ling Jiu felt like he had been struck by lightning as a heart-piercing pain struck his nerves. He let out a painful scream, hugging his head as he rolled around. "Oh, Ling, what's wrong?" The sudden development frightened Li Kai, and his other classmates also surrounded him. "My head hurts." Ling Jiu had a splitting headache while beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. It felt like his head was about to explode. "Oh, Ling, I'll take you to the hospital right away." Li Kai took out his cell phone and was about to dial 120. At that moment, the school's top cadre in Dai Chongsheng, who had noticed the commotion, also ran over. "What's happened to this student?" the principal asked nervously. "Principal, Ling Jiu says his head hurts." Li Kai anxiously replied. "You have to hurry and send him to the hospital. Call 120. Call 120 now. We cannot have an incident in school." The principal waved his hand, and immediately, one of the school's top cadres was ready to make a phone call. However, Dai Chongsheng had a look of delight. "Congratulations, Principal Wang." "Mr. Dai, what do you mean?" The principal appeared dumbfounded. "If I'm not wrong, this student here is awakening his arcana." Dai Chongsheng said with a smile. "Awakening his arcana." The principal and the school leadership cadre were taken aback. The class teacher was even more puzzled. Ling Jiu already went through the trial earlier, but his arcana wasn't awakened then. It's only happening now. That's normal. Dai Chongsheng smiled faintly. Under normal circumstances, many people with arcana talents awaken their arcana during the trial, but there are also a few that awaken their arcana after the rest, as there is a buffer period in between. "Oh, I see." Everyone suddenly came to a realization, and the principal said with surprised elation, meaning, 2/3. Your students have successfully awakened their arcana this year. A joy that comes in a pair, Principal. I never thought that our school would awaken 2 arcanists at once. This is a great achievement, and the reward will definitely be remarkable. Congratulations, Principal. Ha ha ha, same to you, same to you. Hearing everyone's congratulatory wishes, the principal was so happy that his snot came out of his nose. In the past, it was already nice to have one awakening. But this year, 2 of them awakened, and good things came in pairs. One needed to know that an arcanist was much more valuable than a college entrance examination ace. The onlooking students also whispered among themselves, their eyes full of envy and hatred. What kind of sh*t luck do these guys have? So many students didn't manage to awaken their arcanas, but these 2 did. Why? Jealousy distorted people. It would have been fine if it had been someone else, but what kind of people were Ling Jiu and Li Kai? They had average grades. They came from average families. They had nothing else aside from their looks, yet these good-for-nothings actually awakened their arcanas. The gods must have been blind. "Oh, Ling, how are you feeling?" Seeing Ling Jiu gradually stabilize, Li Kai asked with concern. "I'm okay." Ling Jiu wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and forced a smile. His face was still pale, the headache earlier had wrecked him. "Oh, Ling, you've also awakened your arcana." Li Kai helped Ling Jiu up, his face full of excitement. "Do you realize that you've awakened your arcana?" "I've also awakened my arcana." Ling Jiu pretended to be bewildered as he sensed the principal and the others surround him. "Student Ling Jiu, congratulations on awakening the power of Earth." "Ling Jiu, congratulations." Hearing the school leaders and the class teacher congratulate him, Ling Jiu was thrilled. The awakening of his arcana was certainly exciting, but what excited him even more was that the arcana he awakened seemed to be a very incredible one. It was the ability to copy other arcanas. An arcana that was meant to replicate other arcanas. That sounded awesome. Ling Jiao knew that there were many arcanas in this world, but it seemed as though such an ability to copy other people's arcanas had never appeared. I'm able to copy another person's arcana. My own arcana is just too overpowered. I need to keep it a secret. Before I get a hold of things, I better not let anyone else know. Subsequently, the school leadership cadre, Dai Changsheng, and the others returned to the stage to continue the arcana trials while Ling Jiao and Li Kai were invited to join them. Li Kai, Ling Jiao, first of all, congratulations on successfully awakening your arcanas and becoming glorious arcanists. Dai Changsheng smiled. Thank you. Now, let's talk about your arcanas. Dai Changsheng said with a smile. Both of you are very lucky to awaken the earth element arcana. Both of you should know that arcanas are mainly divided into 4 types. Elemental manipulation, body morphing, mental type, and uncategorized special types. The earth element arcana that both of you have awakened is the elemental manipulation type. It is a very powerful combat ability and rather rare. Ling Jiao and Li Kai nodded repeatedly. Different arcanas had different uses. Some were combat type arcanas like the earth type, fire type, and gigantization type arcanas. Some were support type arcanas like clairvoyance, clairaudience, seeing through, and intangibility. Other arcanas were even more special like mind reading, invisibility, precognition, and telepathy. Different arcanas have different usages, but in this world where dire beasts are rampaging, combat arcanas are undoubtedly more popular. Dai Changsheng smiled and said, so I hope that both of you can join our Longwind Arcana Company. In the name of the branch's general manager, I assure you that as long as you join us, you will enjoy the following benefits. Firstly, you will gain a low-level Gene Arcana secret technique. I assume both of you have heard of the Gene Arcana secret techniques, right? Dai Changsheng smiled and said, it's equivalent to those inner strength techniques that the martial arts masters use. With it, we can absorb the Gene Arcana that's floating in the air and make ourselves stronger. The Gene Arcana secret techniques. Ling Jiao was shocked. Since the emergence of the dimensional rifts, the Gene Arcana had appeared on Earth. However, ordinary people could not sense them. Only the arcanists who had awakened their arcanas could clearly sense and absorb the Gene Arcana. In theory, even without a Gene Arcana secret technique, one could still absorb the Gene Arcana, but it would be far less efficient than it would be with the technique. Thus, the Gene Arcana secret techniques were paramount for arcanists, just like the inner strength techniques were for martial arts masters. It was also why so many arcanists joined arcana organizations. They would only attain Gene Arcana secret techniques by joining an organization. Secondly, we will arrange a stand-alone villa for each of you. Of course, the stand-alone villas are company properties, so you only have the right to reside in them, not buy or sell them. Dai Changsheng continued. If the Gene Arcana secret technique was a bit foreign to Ling Jiao, as well as Li Kai, and they did not know the value of the technique, the 2 stand-alone villas moved them greatly. Why? It was just too extravagant. Most parts of the world had been occupied by dire beasts. Oceans, forests, lakes, rivers, mountains, towns, county seats, and county-level cities had almost been turned into dire beast lairs, while humans could only hide inside base cities to survive. How big could a base city be? Not to mention, there were so many mouths to feed. So, the land in a base city could only be described as prohibitively expensive, and ordinary people could only live in government-built, low-cost housing. Stand-alone villas. Do not even bother thinking about it. If you wanted to live in a villa, you needed to have not only the money but also authority and status to go along with it. Out of the 5 million people in the entire Lantian Bay City, no more than 10,000 could afford to live in villas. Yet now, as long as the two of them agreed to join Longwind Arcana Company, they would be part of this club of 5,000 and live in villas. How could they not be excited? How could they not be fired up? Dai Changsheng was very satisfied with their expressions, and he continued, thirdly, the employees of Longwind Arcana Company are naturally paid a salary. I will offer you a basic salary of 30,000 a month, not inclusive of allowances. 30,000 a month. Li Kai's breathing became erratic, and Ling Jiao was tongue-tied too. Lantian Bay City was located in the north, and material prices were relatively low, so wages were naturally not high. The average wage was about 3,000 a month. Their class teacher had a deadbeat salary of 4,000 to 5,000 a month, while both of them, mere senior high school students, could get a basic salary of 30,000. What kind of reasoning was that? Fourthly, after joining our Longwind Arcana Company, you can participate in the company's Arcana classes for free and receive free instructions from Arcana trainers. You have free use of the company's training room, free log-in into the company's website, and many other benefits. Dai Changsheng smiled. I believe that in the entire Lantian Bay City, there is almost no other organization that can provide such generous benefits. Please consider if you would like to join our Longwind Arcana Company. Mr. Dai, there's no need to think. Li Kai was already tempted, and all hesitation went out of the window the moment he heard that. He immediately prepared to agree to it. However, Ling Jiao hurriedly pulled him back. "Oh Li, this is a major life event. You should at least discuss this with your parents. Is it necessary?" Li Kai was rather disapproving, but the second he saw Ling Jiao's wink, he nodded obediently. "Oh Ling, you're right, I should discuss this with my parents." Dai Changsheng observed their expressions and looked at Ling Jiao with surprise. This is indeed a major life event. You should discuss it with your parents. This is my business card. You can give me a call once you've made up your minds. Thank you, Mr. Dai. Chapter 5. Testing Arcana, Pangu Ant Form. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. OL, Ling, why did you stop me? Aren't you tempted? Ling Jiao and Li Kai left the stage. Their life trajectory had completely changed, and they no longer needed to prepare for the college entrance examination. Now, they could go wherever they want, and the school would not interfere. Of course I'm tempted. But I still know the truth about shopping around for anything. Ling Jiao smiled and explained, we have already awakened our arcanas. I believe that other organizations will catch wind of the news soon and contact us. We can have a look at the offers given by the other organizations before we make our final decision. OL, Ling, you're still the smarter one. Li Kai was not a fool. Naturally, he could understand Ling Jiao's reasoning and could not help but feel ashamed. I'm just slightly calmer than you. Ling Jiao touched his nose and said with a smile, where are you heading now? Wanna go home to tell our parents or find a place to have fun? Let's go home first. I need to tell my parents this good news. Li Kai touched his head and smiled. They'll be very happy once they know that I've awakened my arcana. Then let's part ways here. Keep in touch. Okay. Both of them went their separate ways after they left school. Ling Jiao did not rush home, instead, he looked for a secluded area and started to test out the arcana he had obtained. He had already tried replicating an arcana earlier. Now, he wanted to test out the replicated earth-element arcana. Ling Jiao found a rock, and for some reason, rocks had always felt like inert objects in the past, but now they felt different. He could seemingly control the rock with just a thought. It was a very strange feeling that he never had before. Rise. Ling Jiao said in his heart, and a rock the size of a watermelon floated up. While it trembled and looked like it would fall to the ground at any moment, it soon flew. Ling Jiu was thrilled. F***ck. I'm controlling the rock. I can actually control the rock. Since he got too excited, his concentration was not enough, and the rock fell to the ground with a crash. Ling Jiu did not mind it and continued to try. Rise. Fall. Turn. Accelerate. Stop. Split. The rock split in half. Crumble. The rock turned into dust. Ha 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 ha, cool. Looking at the rock, which had been reduced to dust, fall all over the ground, Ling Jiu felt great. He had absolute control of the rock, and it would strike wherever he pointed it to and do whatever he wanted it to do. It was a feeling that could not be described with words. Well, there was one word. Cool. So my Arcana replication is real. The replicated Earth.element Arcana is also real. It looks like I can finally relax. Ling Jiu left the corner feeling satisfied. He then looked for an internet cafe by the road. He now had a lot of questions in urgent need of answers. Ling Jiu found a deserted corner in the cafe and began to look up Replication Arcana. Since Replication Arcana had never appeared in this world before, there was not much information on it. However, an article called The Hypothesis of Possible Future Arcanas caught Ling Jiu's attention. The article opened with this. There are no two identical eggs in this world or no two identical arcanas. The awakened arcanists are the best evidence of this, and even arcanas of the same type have many subtle differences. Different people have different kinds of arcanas, and the number of people on Earth equates to the number of arcanas that may appear. What kind of arcana may appear in the future? Immediately after, the author listed out a large number of arcanas that had yet to appear, and he made detailed guesses of all these brand new arcanas. Replication was one of them. Replication Arcana is an incredible gift that will grant an arcanist a computer's copy-paste ability to replicate other arcanists' arcanas. Its possessor could eventually become an omnipotent god. Of course, Replication Arcana can also have many limitations, like time of effect, cooldown, replication restrictions, and the like. Ling Jiu read each word, and suddenly, he had lots of questions in his mind. Are the arcanas I replicate temporary or permanent? How long would it take for me to replicate again after I have replicated an arcana? Can I replicate all arcanas? Are there any flaws in my replications? The series of questions gave Ling Jiu a headache. He knew that he had no one to help him answer these questions and could only slowly stumble and learn by himself. Ling Jiu then looked up the information of arcana organizations, which were the world's largest power. Some powerful arcana organizations had the right to equal dialogue with governments of countries too. It's always better to be under a shade. As a newbie, it's best if I join one of these organizations. The question is, which one? Ling Jiu opened the top 500 Arcana organization ranking and started to browse it from top to bottom. The number one organization was obviously Pangu Arcana Combine, an Arcana organization founded by the number one powerhouse, Emperor Might. Emperor Might. He was Earth's undisputed number one powerhouse. From his name, Emperor Might had Arcana associated with his body. Indeed, Emperor Might's Arcana belonged to a body transformation type, and he could transform into a very terrifying creature, the Pangu god ant. Ants were known as the Hercules of the natural world, and they were known for their strength. Pangu god ants were the emperors among ants, and they were extremely strong as well as violent. It was said that a Pangu god ant could lift something 10,000 times its own weight, and it was a powerful force of nature. Emperor Might had the ability to transform into a Pangu god ant, so one could imagine how strong he was. Pangu Arcana Combine is the world's number one Arcana organization, with branches all over the world. Its founder is also the world's number one powerhouse. I'm of course happy to join such an organization, but I'm afraid that the treatment I might get would not be comparable to that from weaker arcana organizations. The more powerful an organization, the greater its ability to attract, and naturally, the recruitment threshold would be higher as well. Ling Jiao was not afraid of them looking down on him, but he was afraid of poor treatment. It was something that could not be helped. Everyone wanted to enter the larger organizations, and with the extremely fierce competition, the treatment received would typically be poorer. Vulcan Arcana Combine was founded by the world's second strongest, Vulcan. Vulcan has the ability to control fire. And rumor has it that his flames are unusual. It's a type of meteoric fire from space. Its temperature is terrifyingly high. There's nothing it cannot burn, and it's extremely lethal. This company is also good. Third. Chapter 6. Single. Parent Family, the Gene Arcana. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Unknowingly, an afternoon had passed. After he was done researching, Ling Jiao left the internet cafe and went home. As soon as he entered through the door, he caught a whiff of a very tempting fragrance. What is Dad cooking that smells so good? Ling Jiao came from a single. Parent family. His parents had gotten a divorce when he was very young, so his father had raised both him and his sister single-handedly. With his father taking the role of two parents, the hardships he endured was not something outsiders would understand, especially some time ago, when his company declared bankruptcy. The blow to his father was extremely big. Had it not been for them, his two children, his father would have already thrown himself off the balcony and returned his soul to King Yama. As a result, his father's mental state had not been very good recently. He had been drowning his sorrows with alcohol and was extremely dispirited. He had not cooked in a long time now. Did the sun rise from the west today? Just as Ling Jiao was feeling puzzled, his father poked his head out from the kitchen and was all smiles. Son, you're back. Dad, you're. After spending half a month's time together, Ling Jiao had slowly accepted this cheap dad of his. Besides, the latter was still very concerned about his son. I heard what happened in school from your sister. Ling Tianxi broke into a smile. Son, congratulations on becoming an arcanist. Dad is proud of you. I'll tell you what. Ling Jiao suddenly wrapped his head around it. No wonder his father had come out. He had found out that Ling Jiao had awakened his arcana, and this was indeed a boost to him. Sit down and get some rest. Food will be ready soon. Later on, we'll have a couple of drinks and celebrate. His father was very excited. Do you need any help? Ling Jiao asked. No need. Not long after Ling Jiao sat down, his sister, Ling Xiaotong, came home. The moment she entered the door, she lunged at Ling Jiao. Brother, you're so awesome. I just awakened my arcana, Ling Jiao said with some disapproval. Oh, so pretentious. Go on. His little sister glared at him and added, you know, after the trials were completed, the school hung a banner that said, congratulations to Li Kai, Ling Jiao, and Han Chujun of our school on awakening their arcanas and bringing glory to the school. Han Chujun. She also awakened her arcana. Ling Jiao was a little surprised. Of course, he knew Han Chujun. She was a member of the Olympian class, and the first in class as well, so obviously, she was the first in the entire year. What left an impression on Ling Jiao was that the girl was not only gifted academically, but she was also very beautiful. On top of that, she possessed a good familial background. She could have relied on her looks and her father, yet she wanted to rely on her talents. That was Han Chujun. Even Han Chujun has awakened her arcana. That's unexpected. Xiaotong, do you know what kind of arcana Han Chujun awakened? Ling Jiao asked. I heard that it's some kind of special type arcana. As for the details, I don't know. His sister shook her head slightly. A special type arcana. Food is ready. The meal was scrumptious. Ling Jiu's awakening of his arcana was an earth-shattering event, and the family was filled with joy. Dinner ended really late, and after he dismissed his overly excited and energetic sister, Ling Jiu returned to his room and tried to absorb the gene arcana. Theoretically, as long as you've awakened your arcana, you can sense the existence of the gene arcana around you and absorb it into your body. I should be able to do it as well. Ling Jiu took a deep breath and completely calmed himself down. I heard that the first absorption is the most difficult, and it will become easier later on. Relax. Fully relax. Ha. Ha. A few minutes later, Ling Jiu gradually relaxed. His breathing became imperceptible, and even his heartbeat became much slower. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Suddenly, Ling Jiu saw a light spot dancing around in the room like a firefly. It was drifting irregularly. Then, he saw a second, a third, a fourth. More and more light spots danced around Ling Jiu like prancing fairies. Is this the gene arcana? Looking at the light spots, Ling Jiu's desire to consume them was instinctively aroused. As the thought appeared in his mind, Ling Jiu noticed the nearest light spot flying toward him and disappearing into the top of his head. Then, the second, the third, the fourth. More and more light spots entered his brain, and Ling Jiu felt a chill in his head. Is this what it feels like to absorb the gene arcana? It's amazing. While consuming the light spots one by one took forever, Ling Jiu did not feel any impatience. On the contrary, he found it to be a very novel feeling with a wonderful sensation of cultivating his inner powers. Without realizing it, the night passed, and Ling Jiu was awakened by the alarm clock. It's already 6. Time sure flies. Ling Jiu clearly felt as if not much time had passed, but a whole night had actually gone by. More importantly, even though he had been absorbing the gene arcana for a whole night, he did not feel tired or sleepy at all. Instead, he was full of energy, and he never felt better. "Brother, are you up yet?" His sister's voice rang outside the door, and she still sounded very excited. "I'm up." Ling Jiu opened the door, and a young girl in cute bunny pajamas was standing outside the door with dark circles under her eyes. "Didn't sleep well last night?" Ling Jiu asked. "I was too excited last night." His sister yawned. "Didn't sleep much at all?" "Oh, you." Ling Jiu shook his head. "Hurry up and get ready. We still need to go to school." "Yeah." She nodded her head and curiously asked, "Brother, you don't need to go to school anymore, right? You also don't need to take the college entrance examination." "Of course." Ling Jiu smiled. "But I have to go to school today. The principal called last night and said he had something important to discuss with me. I'm so jealous." Chapter 7. Final choice, joining Pengu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The Principal's Office. Ling Jiu, Li Kai, Han Chu-jun, the main reason I asked all of you to come today is to discuss your enrollment in the Arcana organizations. The principal went straight to the point. Yesterday, a total of 47 Arcana organizations contacted me. Of course, the military also asked me for all of your information. These are the details and relevant remunerations. Have a look. The principal handed them 3 sets of documents that had been previously prepared. The 3 then took the forms and slowly scanned through them. "OL Ling, of the world's top 10 Arcana organizations, 9 are actually interested in us." Li Kai whispered, "Thankfully you reminded me yesterday, otherwise we would have missed out on so many big companies." Thank goodness. The company's ranking is not the most important thing. It all depends on the remuneration packages. While these large organizations may be interested in us, their packages may not be as good as the smaller ones. Ling Jiu said with a smile. Ling Jiu is right. In the past, the most enthusiastic and active ones in headhunting were the smaller organizations and companies. Plus, their remunerations were the best. Principal Wang smiled. But everything has two sides to it. A smaller organization may pay you well, but they are not as good for your future development compared with the larger ones. The larger organizations are full of talent, and the competition is very fierce. However, gold always shines once the impurities are removed. Those who can gain a footing in those big organizations will become great individuals. The three nodded and continued to look through the documents. Wow, Immortal Arcana Company is actually offering a salary of 100,000 a month. There's also this one, a villa alongside a salary of 80,000. This is just too tempting. OL, Ling, all of these companies' terms are sincere. I don't know how to choose. As he scanned through the salary and privileges given by each company, Ling Jiu's face might have looked calm, but his heart was beating fast. The moment he agreed to either one of them, he would instantly transform himself and enter the ranks of the wealthy. That was the life of the Arcanists, the talents that this world needed the most. Of course, excitement was still mere excitement. Ling Jiu knew in his heart that salary and privileges were all secondary. The most important thing was his future development. How to make the most of his abilities to replicate arcanas to become powerful was most vital to him. That alone made him pass on the smaller organizations. The larger organizations were full of talent, and they would have more highly powerful arcanas for him to replicate. So what do the three of you think? Do you have a choice in your heart? Principal Wang asked with a smile. Han Chujun nodded slightly. Ling Jiu was silent. Li Kai then looked at Ling Jiu. Tell me, the principal asked with interest. I have a senior who's working in the headquarters of Vulcan Arcana Combine. He suggested that I join them. Although the salary and privileges may not be as good as those from the smaller companies, it will be good for my future development. Han Chujun said truthfully. A very wise choice. The principal's eyes brightened. Things were easier when you had connections, that was an unchanging truth in any world. Han Chujun knew someone who worked in Vulcan Arcana Combine's headquarters, and that was definitely a big connection. If she used it well, she would need to navigate around lesser detours along the way. Ling Jiu and Li Kai glanced at Han Chujun in surprise. It was rumored that her family had an influential background, but no one knew the details. They did not expect that someone from her family would be working in Vulcan Arcana Combine's headquarters. Her background was unusually influential. How about the two of you? The principal looked at Ling Jiu and Li Kai again. OL, Ling, which one are you choosing? Li Kai looked at Ling Jiu. Pangu. Ling Jiu declared his choice. Pangu Arcana Combine is the world's #1 arcana organization. It is extremely powerful, and generally, most arcanists would choose Pangu. The principal nodded slightly. But as I've mentioned, a large company means it is full of talent, and the competition fierce. It will be difficult for you to stand out. If we have to choose, we should choose the best. Ling Jiu said with confidence. It's alright if the privileges we receive are a little lesser. I believe that if we work hard, we will be able to make something out of ourselves. Well said. The principal had an approving look. Young people should have such a spirit. This is good. Li Kai, how about you? I also choose Pangu. Ling Jiu and Li Kai took the certification issued by the principal and went to Pangu Arcana Combine's Lantian Bay City branch. The 30-story building was one of the tallest and most magnificent buildings in the entire Lantian Bay City. There was a menacing ant logo hanging at the center of the building, which was eye-catching. It was no ordinary ant, but the Pangu god ant, the symbol of Pangu Arcana Combine. Welcome to Pangu Arcana Combine, how can I help you? The moment they walked into the lobby on the first floor, a beautiful receptionist walked over to greet them. Hello, we are here to apply to join the company. Here are our certifications. Ling Jiu handed over the certificate issued by the principal. As the receptionist took a look, the smile on her face grew more enthusiastic. Please come with me. Sorry to trouble you. As the receptionist led the way, Ling Jiu and Li Kai went up to the 30th floor, to the office of Pangu Arcana Combine's general manager. Ling Jiu was taken by surprise when he realized that the general manager was actually a beauty. Her long fiery red hair looked like flames fluttering in the wind, and she had a very heroic air about her. After a brief introduction, the beautiful manager named Luo Jia went straight to the main topic and produced 2 contracts, which she then handed to them. These are the contracts we have prepared for you. Please have a look first, and if there's nothing wrong with it, you may sign the contract. The 2 boys took their respective contracts and browsed through them. It was actually just a formality. The contract that Pangu Arcana Combine gave them was a standard contract. Even if they were dissatisfied with the terms, they would not change anything. Again, large companies like Pangu were full of talent, and what they had was a constant stream of people who were willing to join them. If you were dissatisfied with the terms, you could just choose not to sign it. Ling Jiu basically scanned through the salary, as well as privileges. Compared with the ones he had seen in the principal's office, the salary and privileges here were indeed much inferior to the ones offered by smaller companies. A set of townhouses, a monthly salary of 10,000, 1 set of low-level Gene Arcana secret technique, the rest. However, since they had chosen Pangu Arcana Combine, all of that did not matter. After Ling Jiu and Li Kai confirmed that everything was correct, they signed the contract. General Manager Luo Jia extended her hand and smiled. Welcome to Pangu Arcana Combine, you too. Ling Jiu quickly shook Luo Jia's hand, and a few lines of tiny characters appeared before him again. Name. Luo Jia. Race. Human ability. Fire manipulation, awakened, there's no option to replicate. Ling Jiu's expression changed slightly. What's the situation? Is her arcana's level too high or too powerful? Or is my ability to replicate still on cooldown? Ahem. OL, Ling. Li Kai's voice rang out beside Ling Jiu's ears, and he snapped back to reality. Seeing Li Kai stare at him with a weird look, Ling Jiu realized that he had grasped Luo Jia's hand and had not let go. Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts earlier. Ling Jiu was ashamed, and he quickly apologized. It's okay. Luo Jia smiled indifferently. Since both of you have joined Pangu, I will give you a brief explanation on your next work arrangements. Please go ahead. Ling Jiu and Li Kai sat up straight. Since both of you have just awakened your arcanas and cannot even control your arcanas freely, what the 2 of you need to do next is to study. The company has special training courses for newbies, and for the next 6 months, both of you will receive training. Luo Jia said. After half a year, there will be a training assessment. You can only officially join Pangu after you pass that assessment. Let me remind you, if you fail to pass the assessment, your contract will be terminated, and you will be dismissed. Of course, the houses, salary, and the Gene Arcana secret technique given to you will also be taken back. Chapter 8. Luxury Villa, the Bahamut Absorption Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Ling Jiu and Li Kai left the general manager's office and went to the 2nd floor to complete the formalities. Along the way, Li Kai felt very stressed and complained incessantly. There's actually a training assessment. If we don't pass, we'll be fired. Damn. Don't worry, I've checked beforehand. The training you undergo when you initially awaken your arcana is the fastest. As long as we practice earnestly and become level 1 arcanists, we are almost sure to pass the assessment. Ling Jiu smiled and comforted Li Kai. There was a difference between the strength of arcanists, and naturally, there was a level system. An arcanist who had just awakened his or her arcana was a level 0 arcanist and the weakest of the lot. As they climb upward, every time their arcana increased by a level, their strength would also grow by a level. It was said that a level 5 arcanist could fly in the air freely like the birds. Once they reached level 9, they would have the ability to bring ruin to the world with just a simple gesture. They would almost be no different from the gods and immortals in the legends. Beyond level 9 was the penultimate realm for the arcana, and those in that realm were called the Zenith Arcanists. I hope I can pass the assessment smoothly. I don't want to be fired. If that happens, others would laugh to death. Oh right, the manager said that even the Gene Arcana secret technique would be taken back. How is that thing taken back? I heard it's through erasing your memories. The two of them chatted as they walked, and they soon arrived at the Human Resources Hall on the second floor. After they settled the formalities, both Ling Jiao and Li Kai received an employee card, a set of keys, and an introduction brief. "Oh, Ling, where are we heading next?" Looking at the villa keys in his hand, Li Kai's eyes were burning. He was unable to contain his excitement. Nonsense. We're going straight to our villas, of course. Wahahaha, let's go. The villa that the company had arranged for them was located at the Great Tang Residences area, not too far from Pangu Arcana Combine. It was very convenient to go to work. Without a word, the two of them rushed directly to the Great Tang Residences, and after they showed the relevant identification, they entered the residential area. Great Tang Residences was a high-end residential area. The distance between villas was surprisingly large, and the greenery in the residential area was also incredibly lush. Plus, all of the villas were 4 stories tall. Rockery lawns, small bridges and flowing waters, verdant trees that lined the streets, and a vast man-made lake. Compared with the low-rent housing community they had lived in previously, this place was simply heaven. This is more like a place that a person should live in. What the hell was the place we've been living in before? You're comparing a low-rent housing community with a high-end residential area like this. What do you think? You're right. Heh. Our unit is A.35. The two of them soon arrived at Unit A.35. The villa was surrounded by a meter-tall iron fence, and behind the fence was a townhouse villa that consisted of 3 units. The villa was 4 stories high. The first floor was the garage while the second to fourth floor comprised the residential area. In addition, there was a stand-alone villa in front of and behind the villa. The garden was not huge and was about 50 square meters wide. Nevertheless, this garden was bigger than the low-rent house they had lived in earlier, which was about 40 square meters wide. Looking at the luxurious villa hidden amidst the gardens and greenery, Li Kai said to himself, I can live in that villa too. Oh, Ling, am I dreaming? Will everything be gone when I wake up? Slap. Oh, Ling, why the hell did you hit me? To wake you up from your dream. After they completed touring the villa that afternoon, both Ling Jiao, as well as Li Kai, went home directly and decided to move in right away. Upon witnessing such a high-end villa, they did not want to live in the low-rent housing community for another single moment. The next day, Ling Jiao and Li Kai arrived at the office, and they were taken to the newbie training room. There were 13 other newcomers as well. I'm Bai Yang, and I'm your instructor. Instructor Bai Yang was a burly man in a short shirt and short pants that revealed his powerful muscles. For the next 6 months, I will lead you through the rookie stage. During training, I hope that everyone will study hard, practice hard, and strictly follow your instructor's orders. Do not waste your precious talents and hard-won opportunities. First, let's learn about the Gene Arcana secret technique. The Gene Arcana secret technique is of great value to us arcanists. A low-level technique will increase the efficiency of absorbing the Gene Arcana by 10 times. An intermediate-level Gene Arcana technique will increase it by 100 times. While an advanced technique, by 1000 times. From this, we can see how great the effects of the Gene Arcana secret technique is on us arcanists. As such, it is one of the precious things in all arcana organizations, and unless you join one of these organizations, you won't be able to learn it at all. Ling Jiao and the other 14 newcomers listened on in silence. The low-level Gene Arcana secret technique I'll be teaching all of you is the Bahamut absorption technique. In the following hours, Ling Jiao and the rest started to study intensely. They learned about the low-level Gene Arcana secret technique, the Bahamut absorption technique, how to control their own arcanas, and also learned about arcanas as well as the dire beasts. The schedule for their daily course was extremely tight, and life was very fulfilling. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. On this day, Ling Jiao was absorbing the Gene Arcana as usual. He had to say that the Gene Arcana secret technique's effect was immediate. If Ling Jiao was absorbing the Gene Arcana like he was drinking water through a straw in the past, then he was doing so through a water pipe now. The efficiency was 10 times higher, and the Gene Arcana absorbed was completely different. After 2 months of absorption, the Gene Arcana in Ling Jiao's body was already quite potent, at least much more potent than it was 2 months ago. Ling Jiao, we're off work, let's go eat. Right then, someone suddenly patted him on the shoulder. Ling Jiao abruptly opened his eyes and looked at the young man, who had patted his shoulder, with a baffled look. The boy was called Wang Jiabao, and he came from second middle school. He was also the only person who had awakened his arcana in second middle school. As they had been studying together and possessed similar personalities, they gradually became friends. "Oh, Ling, what's wrong?" When he saw the strange way Ling Jiao was looking at Wang Jiabao, Li Kai asked him suspiciously. "No, nothing," Ling Jiao shook his head, but he was overjoyed because just now, his replication arcana, which had been on cooldown for 2 months, could finally be activated again. Name: Wang Jiabao. Race: Human Arcana. Shadow form: awakened, replicable. Finally I can replicate an arcana again. Ling Jiao was secretly excited. Over the past 2 months, he had been unable to replicate any arcanas for the second time, and he had gotten worried. He had thought that he might not be able to replicate any more arcanas and never expected things to turn around today. Thank goodness. It's been 2 months since the last replication, so the cooldown for my arcana replication is 2 months. Ling Jiao's mind ran active again. Since I can replicate an arcana again, what should I replicate? While Pangu was comprised mostly of arcanists, Ling Jiao only had contact with instructor Bai Yang and the other 14 newcomers. Ling Jiao knew all of their arcanas. Instructor Bai Yang's fire manipulation. Wang Jiabao's shadow form. Yu Changsheng's wind manipulation. Lin Xiaochen's water manipulation. Zhao Xiang's fire manipulation. Yin Ku's hyperosmia. And the like. Chapter 9. Shadow Form Arcana, Simple Test. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. There were many choices. So, which arcana should he replicate? I have an offensive arcana already. Should I replicate a life-saving one? I've heard that the training assessment is a practical field test, and *T will hit the fan if I get killed by a dire beast. Thinking of this, Ling Jiao looked at Wang Jiabao. If there was an ability to save his life, then Wang Jiabao's shadow form was undoubtedly the perfect choice. Guess I'll go with him. Ling Jiao quietly replicated Wang Jiabao's arcana, and as he passed by the washroom, Ling Jiao deliberately touched his stomach. I need to go to the can first. My stomach feels a little uncomfortable. All right. Just come over quickly. Li Kai and Wang Jiabao did not doubt him as they left on their own. Ling Jiao entered the washroom and locked the door. After he confirmed that there were no cameras, he issued the assimilation command. Vush. Although he had already experienced it before, that kind of headache where his head seemed like it was about to blow up still caused him much agony. Ling Jiao covered his mouth and forced himself not to scream as he endured the pain. 10 minutes later, the assimilation was complete, and Ling Jiao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead with a pained expression. If he could, he really did not want to go through the process again. It was just too painful. After a short rest, Ling Jiao tried his newly gained arcana. With a thought, his body gradually disappeared and a black shadow simultaneously appeared on the ground. It was quite a strange scene to only have a visible shadow without the person, but that was the shadow form arcana. It was an arcana where one became a shadow. A few seconds later, Ling Jiao exited the shadow form state and felt very satisfied with his new arcana. I heard Wang Jiabao mention that one can see the shadow in bright places, but in a dark environment, nothing can be seen at all. If used well, there will be unexpected effects. Let's go eat. As he arrived at the canteen, Ling Jiao purposely bumped into someone while he ordered his meal, and indeed, he found that the replication arcana was on cooldown. So it'll be another 2 months before I can use it again. After 2 months of studies and practices, all of you have made some progress. Today, let's test it out briefly. During the afternoon training session, Instructor Bai Yang did not ask everyone to practice on their own as usual. Instead, he announced a test. The test is very simple. It will test arcana control. Instructor Bai Yang glanced at everyone. Let me see what level you've reached with the control of your arcana. Yes, sir. Which one of you would like to go first? Me. The 15 newbies looked at each other, and a tall teenager stood out. He was called Lin Shaochen. His arcana was fire manipulation, and he liked to show off. All right, you may go first. Instructor Bai Yang nodded slightly. Lin Shaochen moved to the center of the training ground, raising his right hand. With a roar, a cluster of crimson flames suddenly surged out of his hand. The flame danced on his palm, and he could not feel any burning sensation. Go! Lin Shaochen performed a hard wave, and the flame shot toward a target 3 meters away. However, just as it was a meter away from its target, the flame weakened and dissipated. The attack range is only 2 meters. Instructor Bai Yang looked at Lin Shaochen. A proper level 1 arcana has a range of 3 meters. Yours fell a bit short, so you need to work hard. Yes, sir. Lin Shaochen blushed and stepped back sheepishly. His showboating did not achieve the desired effect. Next. Me. Zhao Xiang stood up as a water ball the size of a watermelon appeared in his hand. The water ball spun around and kept its spherical shape just like a certain someone's Rasengan one. Go! Zhao Xiang let out a low growl, and the water sphere shot out like a cannonball, instantly striking the track 3 meters away. However, the power of the water orb was too dispersed, and it immediately dissipated upon striking the target. It turned into a pool of water and failed to destroy its target. The range is enough, but the control of your arcana is still rough. Your water ball is flashy but pointless without any offensive capabilities. Instructor Bai Yang commented. Zhao Xiang's expression turned dour as he slinked back into the crowd. Soon after, the others showed off their own arcanas one after another. The variety of arcanas made the event look like a dazzling magic show. However, as Instructor Bai Yang commented, everyone's control of their arcana was still very rough, and the displayed arcana was no different than a magic trick. Next. The instructor looked at Ling Jiao and Li Kai. They were the last two, and Li Kai suddenly became nervous. He could not help but look at Ling Jiao. Let me try. Ling Jiao walked to the center of the training room, and under everyone's gaze, he grabbed the air, and a rock 3 meters away flew up. Compared with the first rock Ling Jiao manipulated, this rock flew smoothly and steadily. It was unlike the first time when it trembled and looked like it was about to fall at any moment. The rock instantly shattered as dust and debris scattered all around. In the blink of an eye, the rock had turned into a rock spear. It was 1 meter long, as thick as an adult's thigh, and extremely sharp like a stalactite on the ground. Go! Ling Jiao pointed at the target, and the rock spear ripped through the air, shooting toward the target 3 meters away. With a snap, the target was pierced by the stalagmite. It was not over yet. The moment the spear passed through the target, it suddenly stopped before turning back toward Ling Jiao. Then, the dust, as well as debris, flew up and gathered onto the surface of the rock spear. A moment later, the rock returned to its original state, and Ling Jiao put it back in place. Clap, clap, clap. Instructor Bai Yang led the applause, and everyone else joined in when they saw it. Instructor Bai Yang was full of praise. Your control of your arcana is quite proficient. You can almost accurately control it within a 3-meter radius, and its lethality is good. You are the best performer so far, and I hope you can continue to work hard. Thank you. Ling Jiao had a polite smile, but his heart was exploding with laughter. The feeling of being able to showboat before everyone sure was cool. I'm just too lame. Oh, Ling, you're just too amazing. When he returned to the group, Li Kai's eyes were full of admiration. You can do it too. Come on. Ling Jiao patted Li Kai on the shoulder. I'll try. Li Kai took a deep breath and walked to the center of the training room. Compared with Ling Jiao's skillful and precise control, his mastery was just as clumsy as the rest. All of you have been training for 2 months now, but I'm not happy with the results. Aside from Ling Jiao, your control over your arcanas are a bloody mess. After the rest, Instructor Bai Yang commented, is it because you guys haven't been taking the class seriously? Or have you lot not practiced after work? In short, if all of you are still at this level after 4 months, I can only say that you will definitely be eliminated. Eliminated. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. It was an unacceptable result to them, regardless. Once eliminated, they would be fired. Humiliation aside, everything that the company had given to them would be taken back. The villa, the wages, the Gene Arcana secret technique, all of them would be taken back. What was scarier was that the trial assessment was for the entire base city, and all newcomers would participate in the same assessment. If they failed, no other organizations would want them. The consequences would be pretty much terrible. I've said everything that I needed to say, and it's the same as always. If you want to pass the test, practice seriously and don't just think of playing around. That's all. You should know what to do. Chapter 10. Extra Practice, Attractive Rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Oh, Ling, how come you're so strong? Do you have any tricks? Teach us. As soon as Instructor Bai Yang dismissed them, both Li Kai and Wang Jiabao approached Ling Jiao. Ling Jiao smiled bitterly. What trick? I've been practicing as soon as I get off work, and I usually don't stop until midnight. I don't even sleep at night because I spent the whole night absorbing the Gene Arcana, ENV. That was the truth. As an adult, he was matured, and he had passed the stage of wanting to have fun a long time ago. Plus, the Arcana was a superpower that he had always dreamed of, so it went without saying that Ling Jiao would work much harder. Unexpectedly, in just 2 short months, he had increased the gap between him and the other youngsters. You've been doing additional practices after work. Wang Jiabao scratched his head and said in embarrassment, I've been drinking and eating with classmates, as well as friends, after work or gaming in the internet cafes or playing basketball or shopping with my girlfriend. I've never done any additional practice. I'm about the same. Li Kai felt a little ashamed. In the past 2 months, he had become a successful person in the eyes of his classmates and relatives. He was popular and sought after for eating, having fun, and socializing, so how could he have time to practice? Ling Jiao shook his head. They were at that playful age, plus, with the sudden drastic changes to their lives, it was understandable if they got engrossed in it for a while. Regardless, you too should take this seriously. Passing the assessment in half a year's time is the most important thing. It is key to whether you can stay in the company or not. Ling Jiu still advised them. Yeah, Ling, you're right. We'll have to put in hard training after work. We need to pass the training assessment. Me too. After the test, Ling Jiu realized that everyone seemed to notice the urgency and seriousness of the matter, and they became much more serious than before. Observing them, Ling Jiu worked even harder. He did not want to be overtaken by a group of brats. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 4 months had gone by. Today, as Ling Jiu was about to get off work, the general manager, Luo Jia, came to the training room with an entourage of company leaders and looked for the new trainees. Ms. Luo, you're here. Instructor Bai Yang stepped forward to greet her. Instructor Bai, how are they doing? Luo Jia glanced at the 15 newcomers standing neatly in a row with their heads and chest high. The company leaders also looked at Ling Jiu as well as the rest. Passing the assessment shouldn't be a problem. Instructor Bai Yang replied confidently. Is that so? Luo Jia raised her eyebrows as she looked at Ling Jiu and the other 14 people. I have some bad news for you. Due to a last-minute request by the government, the training assessment this time around is for you and also the rejected ones. That means, the training assessment this time around is not only for you newcomers, but also the arcanists who have independently awakened their arcana in society. Also, those who were dismissed in previous years will also be participating. The expressions of Ling Jiu and the others changed dramatically. In previous years, only new recruits would participate in the assessment. Most would be from major high schools, and some would be those who had awakened their arcana themselves. Before this, those who had been eliminated in the past would not be allowed to participate. Yet, this year, even those who had been knocked out in the previous years would be participating. It was a huge change. One needed to know that those eliminated in the past years had trained at least a year longer than them. A whole year. What level of strength could they have reached in that time? They would generally be better than this year's newbies, right? It would be fine if that were the case. The problem was, the rules of the assessment were very cruel. The content of the assessment is the same as in previous years. You will be sent to a county infested by dire beasts. You need to hunt the dire beasts down and collect their hearts. Luo Jia plainly said, the more beast hearts you collect, the better your results will be. Although murder is not allowed during the assessment, you are allowed to snatch from one another. That means, even if you try your very best to kill the dire beasts and dig out their hearts, there is a possibility that someone will snatch them away. In other words, this year's assessment is extremely unfavorable to you newbies. The hearts of Ling Jiu and the rest sank. In the previous years, only the newcomers competed, and everyone was basically at the same level of strength. Even if they were to compete and snatch from one another, it would be relatively fair. This year was different. With a group of old farts who had been previously eliminated, their general strength and competitiveness would be higher than this year's newcomers. But, there are always two sides to a coin. Luo Jia continued, the crueler the assessment is, the more you can demonstrate your capabilities. Gold always shines by washing away all that is not gold. Using my power as a general manager, I promise you that those who end this assessment in the top 3 will receive rich rewards. There are rewards. Ling Jiu's ears immediately perked up. The first reward is an intermediate gene arcana secret technique that is worth 1 billion. Woa! The 15 newcomers were in an uproar, and even instructor Bai Yang was shocked. A gene arcana secret technique that is worth 1 billion. The reward this year is that big. The efficiency of gene arcana absorption of a low-level secret technique was 10 times better, while the efficiency of an intermediate-level secret technique was 100 times better. Therefore, using two similar arcanists as a comparison, the amount of gene arcana one with an intermediate level secret technique could absorb at a time was equivalent to the amount one with a low level secret technique could absorb for 10 days. The former's 1 year was the latter's 10 years. It was a full 10 times gap in cultivation. If I could obtain the intermediate gene arcana secret technique, my speed in absorbing the gene arcana would shot up to the moon. Ling Jiu was very tempted. The second reward is the chance to resign your contract. Luo Jia continued, your current contracts are all C-level contracts. If you end up in the top 3, you will be able to switch to an A-level contract. A-level contract. The 15 newcomers were once again shocked. They had been in the company for almost half a year now, so they had naturally learned a lot about the company, such as things pertaining to employee contracts. Ordinary employees generally had the lowest D-level contracts with a salary of several thousand, and they were no different from office workers outside. Arcanists started off with a C-level contract, and not only did they have a basic salary of 10,000, but they also lived in luxurious townhouse villas. Their benefits and privileges were much better than that of ordinary employees. As for the higher B-level and A-level contracts, no further explanation was needed. It was said that once an A-level contract was signed, not only would the monthly salary be in the millions, the house would also be changed to a stand-alone villa. In addition, there were many other benefits. What left the deepest impression on Ling Jiu was that he could enjoy a 30% discount when he shopped in the company's trade center. For example, an intermediate level gene arcana secret technique that was worth 1 billion could be purchased for 700 million. That was the benefit of an A-level contract. Luo Jia swept her beautiful eyes over them. After all is said and done, it still comes down to the same thing. As long as you perform well, the company will not be stingy. So, do your best.